fix to start kicking ass, just like it said at the beginning of the program.
Man of the hour, tower of power, too sweet to be sour.
Sending your ass on the jabroni jet to the other side of the territory, brother.
The Alabama Hammer.
Nightmares are the best part of my day.
The goods from the wood.
Hot damn!
Welcome to the Goods from the Woods. My name is Rivers Langley.
I am Pat Riley.
And today, joining us on Mic 3, the host of Soda Podensky on the Rebrew Network, and returning for the first time since 2015, our friend
Scott Howard.
Scott Howard, guest on our final show that we ever recorded at the original Disgraceland Studios in Santa Monica.
I don't even remember that episode.
Yeah, it was all about telemarketing. And when you moved to Los Angeles, you worked as a telemarketer, and it was hell on earth.
Yeah, soul crushing. I had a lady cry because she couldn't donate to the ASPCA.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's right.
That'll do it.
Yeah, that'll do it. And joining us as our guest today, we've been wanting to have him on the show for a long time. He is the grand poobah of the Unpopular Opinion Network, and my good friend,
Adam Todd Brown.
ATB is here, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
I've been looking forward to doing this podcast for a long time.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for doing it. I love that you... Is that a Drive-By Truckers hat, or is that...
It is a Drive-By Truckers hat, yes.
I love
which
that.
I wore completely coincidentally, even though I know... You're a big Drive-By Truckers fan.
That's my shit. I just saw old Jason Isbell at the Greek Theater a couple nights ago.
Oh, how was that?
Me and a bunch of comedy alt country sad boys sat around and cried a little bit for an hour. So it was a good bonding experience.
I couldn't go to that, but I saw him. He did a club show earlier this year in L.A.
Oh, is that right?
To that. Yeah.
Man, it was great. It's a long damn way from the Bourbon Street Bar, which is where we used to go see him in Auburn, Alabama. So
I would always end up seeing him at the Variety Playhouse.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was usually the go-to venue for drive-by truckers and drive-by truckers related shows. So.
But so today, since we have Adam Todd Brown on the show, and the Unpopular Opinion show itself, and of course the network that it spawned in a lot of ways deals with politics and culture, I felt like we needed something that would honor that tradition and a good intersection of it. And I decided that I wanted to tell the story that I've been wanting to do an episode about this forever, because it is a seriously underreported event, and truly one of the things that makes the 70s magical, that something like this can happen, and that is the Vortex 1 Festival just outside of Portland, Oregon. Have you guys been to Portland before?
I have not.
I have not either.
I've been to Eugene, which I figure is bad enough.
That's close enough. Yeah. Fuck
like
you.
Portland with nothing to do.
Right, yeah.
But the thing...
Except the Ducks. Fuck you, Ducks.
The point is, though, is that there's a difference between Oregon now and Oregon in the 1970s. Like, you might as well say, like, the Wild West, because Oregon back then was not the Oregon of now.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it was very much kind of... It's tough to explain it, because there was, like, still that sort of rural redneck sort of thing that Oregon was, basically founded in.
Yeah, a lot of people forget that Portland, Oregon is the end of the Oregon Trail. So when you play that old video game in middle school, that's where they were fucking heading, was Portlandia. That's the end of the damn Oregon Trail. And that town, throughout most of the late 1800s, the ratio of men to women was like 9-1. Like, it was just dirty loggers punching each other in the streets, and literally pirates kidnapping people and taking them to Shanghai and shit like that. Like, Portland was an insane place back in those days. And by the 1970s, the gender gap had closed a bit and the population started to even out. But to your point, still very rough and tumble.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of crunchiness that was coming in there.
Oh, this might be the beginning of the crunch.
But this is before. It's before the Rajneesh came. And poisoned all the salad bars, just to to draw like a distinction.
Yeah, this is in between.
Was that in Portland?
Well, this was in
a very remote part of Portland.
It was in Oregon. Yeah. This happened before the Rajneesh, before Fred Armisen, but after Pirates and
I think the Rajneesh was like a big, like, kind of transitional moment.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of ways, I mean, honestly, the story I'm about to unfurl, it might really be the starting point for some of this wackiness that has become associated with the great state of Oregon. So South Park Blocks is a 9-acre park that extends over 12 blocks straight through the middle of downtown Portland. The park is located adjacent to the campus of Portland State University, and the park's centerpiece is an equestrian statue of Theodore Roosevelt.
Sure.
So this park is super long, super thin, goes straight through the middle of town, and nowadays is closed to traffic. But at the time, it was 12 blocks, so it had 12 east to west streets cutting across it, which will become important in just a moment.
I thought it was just like Daytona Beach and cars just drove on the park.
I mean,
like on the grass.
The way they describe it, kind of. April 22nd, 1970, the park is the site of the first ever Earth Day celebration. So that's April 22nd. 7 days later, the United States begins bombing Cambodia. Okay, so we go from a really nice moment to a really fucked up moment. Yeah, so the U.S. military begins bombing Cambodia in an attempt to win a war in Vietnam. It makes all the sense in the world.
Sure. And the ordinance is a lot. There's still ordinance there. That's the thing that's important. It's just like that's the other like layer of irony to it, where it's just like Earth Day. And not just the fact that we're dropping bombs, but like to this day in like Cambodia and Laos, they're like farmers. Yeah. They're just like, oh, what's this tube?
Oh, yeah.
And they get blown up by
exactly.
a bomb.
A 50 cal arsenal. So that was April 29th. May 1st, 1970. Nationwide student protests begin. Tens of thousands of students and some faculty walk out of classrooms and in some cases seize administration buildings and begin issuing demands. All of this culminates May 4th, 1970, a very well-known incident. A student protest at Kent State University turns deadly when National Guardsmen open fire on a crowd of 500 striking students. All of the articles refer to them as untrained National Guardsmen. They were all like freshman ROTC members, which that is borne out by the fact that they fired into a crowd of 500 and they killed 4 people and injured
all they're
8.
saying is they would have killed more if they had been trained.
Yeah, that's what it's saying. It's like,
sorry,
thank God,
America.
Yeah, thank God they were idiots that didn't know how to use a fucking gun. Only 4 people died. But obviously, this event kicks off a nationwide.
And they're just giving the untrained ones guns too?
That's who was shooting.
You don't get any training on the guns first? We'll get to it.
Yeah. They just got to college. They were wet behind the ears.
Yeah.
And sure,
clip, shoot.
You go to the poster. If you're ROTC, you get your gun. If everybody else, it's the poster sale.
Yeah, and this story, by the way, has a lot of interesting sort of nerdy cameos. One of the people present at the Kent State Massacre, Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo.
I believe Chrissy Hind was also there.
And that's right, from the Pretenders.
I don't know if she was at the protest, but she was at Kent State at the time.
Yeah, so a lot of new wave got launched by these unfortunate killings.
Thanks, Kent State.
The event kicks off a nationwide student strike in which over 4 million students walk out of classes and take to the streets, which is fucking cool, I will say.
Yeah, especially in an age where there was no social media or internet to spread the word.
Yeah, it was just like, we're all pissed. Yeah. We agree. We're going to walk out.
Yeah, how do you get the word out? Like newsletter? Or
yeah, well...
Crosby, Stills, and Nash songs.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Yeah, that is that song, Ohio, is often cited as like one of the fastest turnarounds in rock history. I think it came out like 2 weeks after that.
Well, I mean, I think it was probably, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be completely wrong, but there were like kind of student kind of activist groups that you could get through because they had like the local kind of organizing chapters, but there was also kind of the national chapter,
right?
That basically go out there and say, all right, here's what we're going to do, and they basically call these local kind of organizers on campus, and what they would do is that the local organizers on campus would get the word out that, we're going to walk out, and they would just kind of create a buzz that, people would kind of join in.
Yeah, so, I asked that question as if phones didn't exist then. They probably just called each other, hey, protest tomorrow, bye.
But in a real sense, it's like we forget that phones exist.
Yeah.
That's how far disconnected.
How did they do it?
Shit.
I mean, I'm sure they had phone trees. Do you guys remember phone trees?
Sounds like my nightmare. Want no part of a phone tree.
It was, it was literally like a thing where organization. This makes me sound like I'm 1,000 years old, but when I was in Boy Scouts, there was a leader phone tree where it was like, okay, so if a camping trip gets canceled, you're in charge of calling Miss Hubbard and Miss Ragland. If
if they're drunk, you call.
Yeah.
Right.
Trickle down phone calls.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd imagine there was probably something like that.
I remember when somebody told me that like people actually used party lines, and I thought the party lines were just those things that they advertised late at night on TV.
Oh yeah, like one
for like singles in your area, but like that was a thing that people did, was that they would have party lines.
They had the button on the phones that said flash, and you would hit it, and you would hear a dial tone, and then you dialed another number, and then you'd hit it again, and the other person would get reconnected. Love doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like phones were like actually a lot more dynamic.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Now we're just like, it's kind of reverted back to, we understand a phone is basically like 2 tin cans with a string in between them, but they actually had, you could do cool stuff with a phone.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, my favorite thing with the party line was, you'd call a friend and be like, hey, we're going to call our other friend and try to get him to talk shit about you. And then we'd drop the other person off, and then he'd still be listening, but then he'd be like, hey, man, and then try to get the other guy to talk shit.
But there was also that thing where if you switched over while the other person's phone was ringing, it would like pause.
Yeah.
So you could tell.
Yeah, you would hear the click.
Yeah. So then you would just pick up the phone and go, who's listening?
Yeah.
Who else is on the phone with you?
Yeah, my
I'm not talking shit about Danny because Danny's on the other fucking line, Danny. Fuck you.
My dad was telling me when he was growing up in like rural ass New Site, Alabama, they just had like one sort of community phone line for like all the houses around him. So
Shit.
only one call could come in at a time. So
There was one number for the town.
yeah, so you could just pick up and listen to whoever was talking. So like he would do that to like get info on girls he was trying to hook
my
up with and shit.
Did
like
you
that.
ever? Did y'all ever call? This is diverted from your thing. I
Oh, it's okay.
apologize.
That's all right.
But did you ever call to get the weather?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, they used to have this thing where there was like a local sort of thing where people could volunteer, and they would have like the weather or like sports scores or something like that, and it was like in the phone book. And the ones that I always remembered was, there was one that was like a pro wrestling one where a guy basically read like the Wrestling Observer just on the thing. And then the other one was this guy that was it was called Dave's Hip Hop Report.
Nice.
And it was like this, like, I got this guy who thick Southern accent. I think he mentioned in a couple of them that he was like in the Navy, because he was just like, yeah, I'm going out to sea because my friend's going to pick it up, and he would just like review like rap albums that were coming out, and they were always like really hilarious. Because he was like way into like some deep, like, this wasn't just like, yeah, new Puff Daddy album's coming out, pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like,
This is how he found out about new Schoolie D and shit like that.
oh yeah, no, he would just like talk about, like, just go super deep. He's just like, yeah, new Company Flow album out. And it's just like, oh geez.
On the campus of Auburn, you can still call this number. The student union, which is Foy Student Union, has their line. I still have it in my phone, 334-844-4244. You can call Foy and ask them any question. And ideally, it was supposed to be like, hey, when does Domino's close? But it was mostly used for people just fucking with them, like, hey, could God make a rock so heavy he could not lift it, and shit like that.
Yeah, just anything esoteric.
Yeah.
That you want to ask somebody
That was the
making
plot-
minimum wage.
That was the plot point for an episode of Hey Dude.
Was it?
Oh, really?
Yeah, that
They're
Danny-
calling information?
Yeah, it was like, no, Danny had to answer all the questions, and at first it was like a thing where he like knew about, because he was like, he grew up there because he was a Hopi Indian.
Oh,
was
that's
it
right.
like
So
his-
he was supposed to explain like what all the animals and rock formations were, but it just kind of spiraled out of control where Danny had to answer like existential questions
like
and
applying
stuff.
his Hopi wisdom to these white tourists.
Yeah. So May 5th, the next day after Kent State, 134 Portland State University faculty members walk off the job. Professors just being like, fuck you, walk off the job. And
Yeah,
that
that's-
forced the campus to close down.
Yeah, I remember the last time I remember there being like walkouts by professors was around the Iraq War, when the Iraq War started.
Yeah, I think I remember that,
Yeah,
actually. They,
And I haven't seen that since.
yeah, people, if nothing else, get involved, man. If you're pissed, walk off your job. So May 6th, the next day, protesters erect a geodesic dome that serves there's going to be a lot of hippie shit in this episode, that serves as a medical tent. They also found a pirate radio station called Radio Free Portland, as well as an underground newspaper called The Wall Poster. This is
They do all this like
from a park.
within days in a
within
park.
2 days in a fucking park.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's like insane. Like all this resistant shit just went up immediately.
Takes me a week to add a new podcast to iTunes. It's like, oh, I gotta log into that.
The paper, the Wall Poster, stated 4 demands.
Modest.
Yeah.
Only 4.
1, immediate withdrawal of U.S. troops from Southeast Asia. So modest demand number 1. Modest demand number 2, immediate withdrawal of Portland police from the PSU campus.
Sure.
The immediate release of Bobby Seale, the Black Panther leader charged with conspiracy and inciting a riot at the 1968 Democratic National Convention. And this is the weird one, and I Googled this phrase, and literally this one paper is the only place I've ever heard this, and I have no clue what the fuck they're talking about. It says, detoxification of nerve gas. What the which just makes it gas. Like, that's not
Yeah.
that's what nerve gas is toxic.
Just smells funny.
I don't. Yeah. But it's like, all right, take the take the nerve gas and make it stink bombs.
Yeah, my brain's not shutting down. But somebody farted.
Isn't detoxified nerve gas just whippets?
Dude.
Yeah, detoxified nerve gas.
Yeah, the
rules.
cops come in and just throw whippet grenades and make everybody laugh.
That could actually be. What
That
they
would
meant,
actually,
yeah.
as I'm saying that,
crackers and
that's,
stuff.
as I'm saying that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
Steve-O keeps jumping on him.
It sounds like one of those like weird experimental weapons, like the gay bomb. That, like, they would,
Yeah, exactly.
just like, if you just have all your enemies just like laugh uproariously for 15 seconds, you can overtake them.
Yeah. After several days, the talks began between students and administrators. The concern cited by police and administrators was that the barricades were blocking vehicle traffic. Which is, of course, the point of a barricade and, to a larger extent, the point of direct action protesting. One minorly inconvenienced Portland motorist was quoted as saying, quote, "I am a law-abiding citizen. Why don't you shoot these commie-loving, long-haired hippie freaks? How can you let them get away with this?"
Sounds pretty law-abiding.
Yeah, he's
Shoot protesters in the street.
Yeah, he was sad that he had to go 12 blocks north to Pioneer Square to go around the fucking protest. The next day, after several negotiations, students began to take down the barricades, and things seemed to be quite going well until police demanded that they also remove the geodesic dome.
Oh, hell no. No. Not the dome.
No, the dome had to go.
Did y'all have a person in your hometown that lived in a geodesic
You
dome?
bet your ass I did.
There's in every town there's like one person that has a nice.
And this is a shitty dome. We'll put these pictures on our Twitter. We're at the Goods Pod.
Oh, yeah, that's a trash dome.
It's a trash dome.
Like there's always in every town like one person that like at least one person that like lives in the geodesic dome that they built for themselves.
Oh yeah. Students claimed they had a permit for the dome, which no, you didn't. They don't issue permits for geodesic domes.
Well, if you make up a process and then go through it,
right?
then, yeah, technically you have a permit.
And they refused to follow police orders. Around 6 p.m., approximately 150 students locked arms and blocked the removal of the dome. The protesters expected to be taken into custody. Instead, that's when 100 of the police bureau's tactical operations platoon suddenly charged and began busting heads with batons. So they're like, we're not leaving, you're going to have to arrest us. And then the police just started hitting them with nightsticks.
Did they swarm the dome and like hit that like in Warcraft?
Yes, there is a picture. So I've got a picture here of all the cops standing there, and first of all, they are just classic police douchebags.
Oh yeah.
And there is a photo of the aftermath where you can see the dome all like kind of crushed, like
where it's been smashed to death.
Yeah.
They're wearing, for those of you that don't know, they're wearing the cop suits. If they were pink, they would basically be the cops from the Marilyn Manson's The Dope Show music video.
Yes, they would.
Classic, like Tom of Finland cop outfits.
Yeah, they're just missing the cod pieces, and they'd be right there for a Tom of Finland drawing. A PSU psychology professor, Hugo Cordray, was quoted as saying, "As a psychologist, it was amazing to see human beings turned into machines. Their faces went blank, and then they took a step and shoved, bashing their way through the crowd. It was frightening and merciless. I saw skulls cracked. We were scattered in all directions. My sturdy 1960s glasses got smashed, but they saved my head." Which, fuck you. It's this whole story is such a push and pull for me of just being very anti-authority and then also very anti-hippie. So I just can't.
Yeah.
It's hard to resolve.
And this is like when the government was really getting into like mind control type stuff too. So hearing him say that, I'm like, was it like really that? Like, did someone just flip a switch and they all of a sudden went blank and attacked? Because I want to see that too.
Yeah. They were MK Ultra.
Exactly.
Students began frantically trying to fight back with rocks. So they threw rocks at the cops. After the incident, the mayor of Portland, Terry Shrunk, said that, quote, "The police did their very best to avoid this." Sure.
I got mixed up because when you heard Terry Shrunk, I thought you said Terry Brunk.
Yeah, like it was Sabu.
It was Sabu.
he dove off of the tree into the dome.
Yeah, the mayor's always covered in barbed wire.
Mayor Terry Funk. Hey, we had to get extreme on those protesters because...
yeah, he beat up one of the protesters and put him on top of the dome and then jumped off the tree and threw the dome into him. So they kept their cool for 3 days. When action became necessary, my instructions to the chief was to use the least amount of force he could, but not let any police officer be pushed around, which is sort of a contradiction in terms, I think. It's like, yeah, wink, wink, don't hurt anyone. Wink, wink.
Right. Also, don't let them sass you.
Yeah. Don't take any shit from anybody. At the end of the day, 31 protesters were taken to the hospital in what is still referred to as Bloody Monday in Portland. The day after police and students clashed in a bloody confrontation on the PSU campus, 5,000 people marched on City Hall. Later, a Multnomah County grand jury found that the police did in fact use excessive force, but no officers were charged at the end of the day, and the case was closed. So that sounds like now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like,
That's the problem with the United States being so big. Like, if Oregon was its own country, we'd remember that every year.
Right,
like
of course.
Like, Bloody Monday would be such a huge thing, like Bloody Sunday in Ireland.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're just all one country, so we're like, who has the time?
Oh, yeah. This is, it was, doing research for this episode was a little bit hard because this is sort of an obscure event. Yeah. After the standoff at PSU, the city's anti-war groups coalesced under the name, and I hate this so much, the People's Army Jamboree.
Oh, fuck you.
That rules. That rules.
You can just smell the name.
Yeah, it's patchouli for sure, and BO. They protested and performed anti-establishment street theater. So right here, this is
I'm back on Nixon's side.
Me too. This is what they call in poetry the volta, where everything switches from like just straight up like, yeah, they got a geodesic dome, but they're militant as shit, to no. You're getting into self-indulgence. That's not what this is about. Focus, hippies, focus.
And nothing's better than 1960s, early 70s, like hippie street theater.
Oh yeah,
just like
Paradise Now and shit. Fuck
We're
you.
gonna lift up City Hall
With our minds.
and throw it.
We're all gonna put pyramids on our heads and move the Pentagon. Yeah.
Just miming that they're like holding up pianos with pulleys, and it's just like, we could drop the pianos at any time, my man, onto your head, Mayor Terry Brunk, Shrunk, or whatever.
Mayor Sabu. Let's just call him Sabu, from now on.
Okay. With his spokesperson, Bill Alfonso.
After the founding of the People's Jamboree, things appeared to quiet down in Portland itself, but leftists up and down the West Coast were pissed and looking for a rematch. So shortly after the standoff, and this is great, it was announced that Portland, Oregon would host a convention of the American Legion.
What?
So the most pro-war organization of the time, between August 28th and September 3rd. An estimated 30,000 Legionnaires would be descending on Portland, and their guest, the keynote speaker, Richard fucking Nixon.
His middle name is actually Milhouse, okay? It's not fucking.
Yeah. So
were they trying to get him assassinated?
I think they were trying to fuck with these people, honestly. Like, it makes no sense. For what happens from here on out, you know, it's probably because I've been reading about this for the past few days, and I'm just like, you know, gone totally off the fucking reservation in terms of my theories. But I'm like, at this point, I think the government, their plan is, what is about to happen is set into motion, and they just begin fucking with everybody, and in an attempt to break the left.
They did a lot of that in the 70s.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because it's like the American Legion nowadays is like in any fraternal organization, really, because we mentioned this when we were doing the wrestling show when we were at the Moose. It's like fraternal organizations nowadays are just like, yeah, it's a bar. You know, it's essentially a bar.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know, a bunch of older veterans go there. It's a bar. They hang out with each other. They have bingo for meat. Like, that's kind of what they do. But these were like American Legion, Knights of Columbus, other organizations like that. They were much more active. It wasn't just a bar where older people of a certain group hung out. These were like actual like activists in their own way.
Yeah, but what you have to take into consideration at this time is the American Legion is mostly comprised of World War II and Korean War veterans, all of whom hated fucking hippies because they were seen as being disrespectful to the military and shit like that. So you basically have people who could not be more pissed off at protesters coming, and 30,000 of them are coming to Portland and bringing the fucking warmonger in chief with them. So they announced Nixon. All of a sudden, it was all hands on deck for the radical left up and down the West Coast. Anti-war activists decided to have a demonstration to coincide with the convention, hoping to direct momentum built during the PSU strike and to attract at least 25,000 protesters from Portland and across the country. So they want a fucking fight. Like, that is straight up the stated goal. And of course, now the FBI basically start releasing calls for everybody to be in Portland at this time.
Yeah.
In all
70s
of these...
FBI.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That is the best vintage of FBI.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
They were so insane.
Hoover's dead. They're off the leash. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I tell people about this site all the time. It's called FBI.vault.gov.
Oh, shit.
Go that's where they post all their Freedom of Information Act request files. Go put your favorite celebrity's name in and enjoy your next 6 hours. It is amazing.
Shit.
And in the 70s, they were especially crazy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've got some quotes from their documents there.
And it's like these deep files about people who you think nowadays were lame. Like, you're just like, oh, that person's just so milquetoast. And you see the FBI files, and they make them sound like these, like, no, this person's a super beast. Like, they just kind of elevate. It's just
Barbara Streisand's going to end civilization.
Oh, don't get them started on Chris Christopherson.
The FBI saw the American Legion Convention as an excuse for anti-government extremists to infiltrate Portland, which it definitely was. When polled, residents of Portland sympathized with the anti-war sentiment, which shows that popular opinion was starting to turn, but they were worried about the destruction of property. So this is from a declassified FBI document. Quote, as referenced, communication will show all current information indicates that thousands of dissidents, hippies, anti-Vietnam, anti-military protesters, and other individuals generally bent on bringing down society, the government, and all of its representatives will be gathering in Portland for the American Legion Convention August 28th through September 3rd, 1970, and probably for several days in advance. Volatile conditions could exist throughout the city during the entire period. So that's from the FBI. So I love their giant laundry list of potential people showing up to this.
Hippies, yippies,
The Doors,
cryptids, furries.
Yeah, it's the scene in Joe Dirt. Hoosker do's, Hoosker don'ts. Listing fireworks.
Jugglers, juggalos.
So just, after the MLK and RFK assassinations and the violence of the 1968 DNC in Chicago, the Students for Democratic Society, which had been the chief sort of organization of the New Left, had shattered into a million pieces with varying degrees of militancy. One of those pieces was the White Panther Party, which saw itself as the brother-in-arms to the more famous Black Panther Party.
like White Lives Matter today is the
well, no, I mean, no.
partner to Black Lives Matter.
So the White Panther Party, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was started by a guy named John Sinclair.
Yep, that's right.
And John Sinclair was also the manager of the MC5, the rock band.
Yep.
And the MC5, outside of just being like their music is the shit.
Yeah.
Like the best way to explain the MC5 is that they thought that the Stooges were just the wussiest group of guys.
Right.
Like they basically would just talk about the Stooges as, oh, those guys, they're JV. We're varsity.
Right. Well, and the MC5 were all legitimately thrown into jail for their various activist activities.
And their lead singer, Rob Tyner, had he was a white guy with the biggest afro ever, and he used to wear gold lame granny blazers. he looked awesome, and they were like the house band of the White Panthers, and they were the band that had the reputation of being the only band tough enough to show up at the 1968 Democratic National Convention, because it was supposed to be like a music festival with all the hippies in Chicago, and all of them were just all the bands were just like, we are not showing up because we know something bad's going to happen. And the MC5 showed up. They were like, screw it, we're going to show up and we're going to be the soundtrack of this absolute calamity. And it's also funny to watch them talk about this, because Wayne Kramer in his 50s looks a lot like Mike Judge. So it's like you just see Mike Judge. It's like, yeah, the cops were just beating everybody up. It was absolute madness, and we were just like, yeah, fuck it, we'll be the soundtrack to this. Screw it, we don't have anything better to do. We need a reputation,
A White Panther Party memo from July 22nd, acquired by the FBI, said that the WPP Portland had been acquiring firearms by both illegal purchase and theft, and had also acquired approximately 8 sticks of dynamite.
Oh, Jesus.
So the shit was about to go down.
1,
Yeah. Nothing 2, nothing wrong with me.
3, something's got to give.
Oh God, yeah. Check out Butt Rock Gauntlet, our last episode. Meanwhile, People's Army Jamboree member Doug Weisskopf was on a camping trip.
Contrasting John Sinclair with like the what was it,
the Happy Time Family, the natural Dr. Fuque's 100% natural good time family band solution,
the People's Revolutionary Jamboree Hootenanny,
the People's Army Jamboree,
which might be the guys that make Dr. Bronner soap.
Honestly, that's what happened to these fuckers. They made Bronner soap. So meanwhile, People's Army Jamboree member Doug Weisskopf was on a camping trip with his friends in Milo McIver State Park on the Clackamas River near Estacada, Oregon. Quote, "It was that camping trip that the idea came to us. We sat around the fire in the sand, looking up at the stars, and pledged to put on a, quote, festival of life to counteract the Legion and Nixon. Shortly after the camping trip, the Koinonia House, a peace activist Christian group, hosted a public meeting. And it was during this meeting that the group of campers proposed the idea of a, quote, biodegradable festival of life.
Hell yeah.
Come on.
The festival was to be called Vortex 1. And, so...
It sounds like something that would happen now.
Yeah.
Every word of that sounds like it would happen now.
They had one in Atlanta about maybe 10 years ago called Echo Project that was like, it was like, we're going to fight the Bush administration with the flaming lips in a field. Sponsored by Coca-Cola.
That was, that was in like Little 5 Points, wasn't it?
No. It was like out in the middle of a field.
Oh, yes. My mistake. Because I remember when it happened, everybody was like, so that's what Music Midtown is now?
Like, No, this was like out in the middle of a field. That's what it reminded me of, was the Echo Project. And so Vortex 1. In a first for hippies, volunteers from the organization immediately began setting plans into action, which is very uncharacteristic of the hippies. They met with Oregon government staffers, who then got him in the room with Republican Governor Tom McCall. Fearing that the alternative would be the torching of Portland to the ground, Governor McCall approved a rock festival to be held in McIver State Park at the same time as Nixon's scheduled visit as a way to draw protesters out of Portland.
It's not a terrible idea.
It's not a terrible idea, but it's also where we go back to that original thing of Nixon saying that he's going to show up, where I'm like, this whole thing seems like you guys planned all of this.
Yeah.
Like, this whole thing stinks of COINTELPRO.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So part of the deal was that the cops and the National Guard would surround the festival site and then turn a blind eye towards behavior, specifically the use of marijuana and public nudity.
So it's like Amsterdam on The Wire.
Yeah. It's exactly like Amsterdam on The Wire. Yeah. They're like, we're going to look the other way. Fucking fill up this state park and do whatever you want.
I went to a weed festival in Northern California a couple years ago. Before,
is that the Shits and Giggles?
It was at UC Santa Cruz.
Oh, never mind.
So yeah, it was in the worst city in America.
Just home of the banana slugs.
Wretched place. And it was before weed was recreational, so it was still kind of not legal to even have an event like that. And that's always so tense.
Yeah.
Because there's always police there. And at any minute they could be like, nah, never mind.
Yeah.
We're just going to arrest you all.
No, we're just going to start hitting you with batons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have gone to this music festival is what I'm saying.
Oh, hell no. No, it was funny, man. Yeah, because I kept thinking of like and we had a music festival episode several years ago, and I talked about my experience at Bonnaroo, but it kept reminding me of Bonnaroo, where the entire event was surrounded by police. There were no police inside at any point, except for I did see a mounted cop on a horse smoking out of a pipe at like 2 a.m, which was kind of cool.
Nice.
It was just a cop on a horse, and he was like lit up a bowl, man.
It sounds like those things that the cops do when they have people that have outstanding warrants, where they call them and they're just like, "You just want to cruise, come to the police station and claim your tickets to the Big Red Boat cruise," and they're like, "All right."
So,
damn.
Two things about that.
Arrested.
One, they kind of did that in my hometown in 2004. They put on something called Odyssey Fest in Camp Hill, Alabama, headlined by Galactic, Carl Denson's Tiny Universe, and Keller Williams. Those were the three.
Isn't Keller Williams like a
third tier jam band artist?
Oh, okay. I thought it was like
not the realtor.
I thought it was a realty company.
Yeah, it was the realty company. They were just like, "Hey guys, we're gonna tell you about what we got for sale in Oak Grove. You get 2 whole acres on a lake for under $100K." We're Keller Williams. No, Keller Williams is his most famous song is "Freaker by the Speaker." You'd love it. But anyway, yeah, they had this Odyssey Music Festival, and literally everybody just showed up. Immediately, everyone started smoking weed, and then the cops just arrested everybody. Like, it was no hesitation. Like, I think they let it go on for a day, just so like enough people could fill it up, and then they just arrested a shitload of people.
Yeah, definitely don't ever go to something like this in Alabama.
No,
it's 100%
for the love of God, no. And shit, the governor of Oregon at this time was a Republican. Like, like we were saying, it's a pretty damn conservative state. So this all around seems like a bad idea, but it just reminded me of Bonnaroo, like I was saying, where like the whole event is surrounded by cops, and I'm like, any minute they could just pull the plug on this and just ruin everybody's life.
So the idea is they're there to prevent like murder.
Yeah, the idea is that like all these people like the fucking White Panthers literally have like they're accruing like dynamite and shit. Like they want to burn the fucking city down and just like stage a revolution essentially. And the idea is that like the peaceful wing of the hippies is like, nah, man, like we're gonna try to like have a peaceful solution to this because they
biodegradable festival.
A biodegradable festival. So they see what's coming, and this is where I think it gets into that COINTELPRO shit where I'm like, who exactly are these peaceful hippies who are suggesting this? Yeah, it seems to be curiously well organized for the people that I'm about to describe that ran the goddamn thing.
Yeah, like you're trying to trick the hippies into behaving out of spite.
Right, or just doing what they do. Like hippies, like or at least on paper here, they're the sort of square conservative government version of hippies. They like 2 things: getting high and overthrowing the government. And they're trying to appeal to the former, I guess, to save them from the latter.
Nudity is like also.
God!
They're just like the thing that unites both the hippies is like nudity.
But
they're just like, all right, well, do you want the weed and nudity or the armed revolution and nudity sort of thing?
Yeah. Oh, the other thing I was going to say, to your point about people like, like, hey, you want a free DVD player? And then you get thrown away, you get locked away for like owing child support.
Forever.
Yeah. One of the FBI things that I found was basically a list of particular people that they were supposed to be on the lookout for attending this festival, so they could basically do a checklist. It was like, oh, this person's going to be driving a 1970 this thing. He's coming from Berkeley. He's a known radical. This person is going to be driving a so-and-so with like California plates. He is, and there's like this list of people where they were essentially counting on a bunch of people showing up to Portland to burn the city down, and then hearing about this festival and then being like, fuck it, let's go, like the Big Lebowski, fuck it, dude, let's go bowling, and just leaving the city. And then now they're on the lookout for these people so they can say like, okay, this person's been neutralized. This person's now on LSD and wandering around nude in a creek. Like he's not a problem. So that was definitely part of it. So McCall and his hippie associates unveiled Vortex 1 on August 7th, 1970, and they gave themselves 3 weeks to pull this together.
Sure.
So McCall later remarked that by making this agreement less than 3 months before his upcoming November vote for a re-election, he had just committed political suicide. His opponents in that election would later deem the event, quote, the governor's pot party. So this Republican governor was legitimately worried that because he was essentially trying to save people's lives, that they would then use that against him, which is exactly what they did.
And this was also a different Democratic Party that was not into pot. Nobody's into pot whatsoever. That's like the thing where it's just like...
right.
Yeah.
You
this
don't
is the
wanna
Hubert Humphrey fuckers.
Yeah. These are like...
Understandably, after word of this festival gets out, the radical left was pissed. This is from a zine called The Berkeley Barb. The People's Army Jamboree was regionally conceived to confront these people with the real problems of today. People's Army Jamboree has been co-opted by moderate liberals who now intend the same old no-results peace march. The Portland Liberation Front calls for the support of all brothers and sisters of the revolution to assist here. Several collectives have begun collecting spray cans of oven cleaner to use in spraying the faces of pigs. Woo. So...
Yeah,
there's still apparently a radical element that's just like this riot's happening.
I like to imagine that editorial office is just filled with like 12 guys that look exactly like Lester Bangs.
Right, yeah. Everyone's got like half shaded.
And they all have
lenses.
T-shirts that say "fuck" on them.
I mean, the new, well, you say newsroom. I'm sure it's the dorm of a guy at Cal, the Berkeley Barb.
people forget about the 70s, though. There was so much like legit terrorism in the United States.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Like when these people are writing about how angry they are, they probably wanted to blow some shit up.
They blew up like an entire apartment building in Greenwich Village.
It's just that no one died.
Yeah.
Like they would bomb shit like after hours.
Yeah.
So if you work there, you're just showing up the next day like, hey, day off. Nice.
Right.
Someone blew up the building. I'm going home. I get paid.
Yeah.
Bomb day.
Yeah.
No work.
Bomb day.
Bomb day. Ferris Bueller's bomb day off.
Have you ever seen the band Yellow before? The guys that did that song, they look like two guys. It's like, imagine if it was a band, but it was two Scatman Johns. That's what they look like.
So they're stockpiling oven cleaner, which I liked that. I didn't know that was a substitute for mace, but apparently,
that stuff's hardcore.
Fuck yeah, dude. They were just
cleans
like
an oven.
Yeah, they were. So I read some different things that were like every grocery store in Portland was supposedly sold out of oven cleaner. Like this was like a recurring thing I kept seeing. I was just like, damn, this must have been like in some anarchist cookbook shit, and I just had no idea that like, oh, this is a cheap alternative to tear gas or pepper spray.
Yeah,
it's a lie, man.
Yeah. So nevertheless, plans went forward for the first ever government-sponsored rock festival.
Amazing.
The festival site, Milo McIver State Park, is located 23 miles south of Portland. According to Ed Westerdahl, McCall's chief of staff, McIver Park was perfect because, quote, there was only one way in and one way out. Those fuckers. If the festival goers became unruly, then they could be corralled there. So they're just straight up like, yeah, we could have just murked them if we needed to. Block the road and drop the bomb if we had to quell anything over there. The festival officially began on October 28th, 1970, though it is said that before Vortex 1 began, over 2,000 people had entered the park. Early arrivals became part of the volunteer army that erected the stage, medical tents, and an industrial-sized kitchen complete with donated food. To feed
and the Monster Energy drink hype.
Yeah. And now if it was 2018, it would be a fucking
the Jolt Cola hype tent.
Yeah. The hair salon sponsored by Garnier Fructis. Yeah. That was always a thing at Bonnaroo where it was like, we'll wash your hair and courtesy of Garnier Fructis. I'm like, gross, man.
But it's like, it's all that crap from it's all that stuff from the 1960s. So instead of the like Axe body spray hype tent, it's the high karate hype tent.
The
Stetson Cologne presents
the I'd walk a mile for a camel foot massage. To feed the thousands of festival goers, volunteers prepared a vegetarian mush. So apparently all the food that was donated was like, I kept reading reports where it was like a truck full of onions was donated by a local farmer. Broccoli was donated by this grocery store. So like basically people just donated all these vegetables and they used a boiler from a salvaged battleship to create a gigantic vegetarian mush, which was stewed with a canoe paddle.
So they just had a salvaged battleship on hand somewhere.
It's I guess Portland.
You never know when we're gonna need it, man.
Yeah, well, I think there is it's that you could follow the Willamette River down the Pacific Ocean. I think there is a Navy base down there. So somebody brought a fucking boiler from a battleship to this festival and was like, load it up with stew, bro.
Is it just coming out of like one nozzle?
It sounds gross. Every description I read of it was like, this sounds like the worst food you can imagine.
It's like the food that they like slop on the plate on Salute Your Shorts to show how Camp Anawana sucks. It's just like,
Yeah, it was like, well, Monday's mush day, except this was mush day for a week. And apparently, like, donations of food just kept showing up, and they just kept adding it to the stew. Like, at no point was it not stewing.
So, like, today's mush tastes a little different than yesterday's mush.
Right,
So, there's a reason to go back.
They were like basically making Soylent Green. Like, that's
Probably someone fell in it at some point.
Hippie had to fall into that.
Yeah.
I'm glad the hippies lost.
I mean, it does
After
raise
hearing this, that's,
it does raise the question if human meat is vegetarian.
I feel like that awkward silence was unwarranted.
it sounds like a question my dad would ask when like one of my vegan friends would come by. He'd just be like, "A shrimp vegan?"
What would happen if you ate my thumbs?
It's like, is fish vegan?
Vegan?
So they're not in the land, so it makes them vegan, right? Like that sort of thing.
So because the event was free, no one counted the number of attendees, but it's estimated that between 30,000 and 100,000 people attended the event. The traffic jam heading out to McIver Park was an estimated 22 miles long, the longest in Oregon history, which means 22 of the 23 miles of road was just a traffic jam. So literally you would just get out of Portland, boom, you're in the jam.
Wow.
So,
do we know? Does it? I'm sure it comes up at some point. But who's headlining this festival?
Oh, we're getting there. That's
Okay,
we're
good,
saving the best for last. That's the main event. So,
I have some guesses.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be wrong. Organizer and police liaison Glenn Swift remembers, quote, "At the press conference, one of the questions was, who's going to keep the peace? I said, we will keep the peace because I am in charge of Shanti Sena. This was Gandhi's idea. I learned it from the Quakers in New York. People in the community act as peacekeepers. They mediate disputes by forming a human chain between angry groups to prevent violence. The government decided to station the National Guard and the police outside of the state park. Before the festival, the state gave us walkie-talkies and gave us armbands. I have a picture of me with one on. Just the armband."
What?
So there's a lot there. This guy is saying, so he mentions Shanti Sena, which was Gandhi's idea. So basically, instead of, having any sort of monopoly of force, just random people who were not involved in any sort of kerfuffle would form a human chain between the two sides and just, they deal with it like that, man.
Perfect.
Carl Lewis has a song about that. The sprinter Carl Lewis.
What? Really?
Yeah. It's called Break It Up, and it's an amazing music video.
What? No
It's
shit.
from the 1980s, and it's like vaguely about like
Shanti Sena?
Sort of, yeah, where it's like you build a human chain and never break it up, and it's just a lot of him. It's him singing, and this is like Carl Lewis is recognized for having simultaneously the worst opening pitch of all time and also the worst performance of the national anthem ever. And so it's his foray into music, and it's him like singing and mugging a little bit, and then there's like shots of him working out in a gym, and then there's shots of him like just footage of him doing track and field, being like the best track and field athlete, male track and field athlete that you could possibly imagine. But then there's like a twist at the end where he's like singing to some. It looks like he's singing to somebody, and then it's actually an elderly woman. And then they like at the end they go in the sauna together and they put the "Do Not Disturb" sign.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the song's amazing. It's really good.
The other thing he mentions is that the National Guard tried to give him and the other police liaisons. They gave him walkie-talkies and then also little armbands, so the people could easily identify the helpers and shit.
But he's a cop, or is he?
No, he's the liaison to the police. He's a hippie,
and he's naked.
But he's saying that he has a picture of him with just the armband on. So he's totally butt-ass naked. So McIver State Park has two distinct sections. In the upper section is a large green meadow. This would be the site of the rock festival. In the lowlands on the beach next to Clackamas River would be the, quote, Lifestyle Festival.
Oh, dear.
The Lifestyle Festival contained a sprawling encampment. The Portland community-based activist groups tended collectively to the various needs of the festival. The food co-ops and organic restaurants put together a facility that provided free food, as we mentioned. There were mud baths and, quote, freak out teepees for those experiencing an overdose on LSD. So, as much as I wish that the freak out teepees was a band, it's not. It was just a thing they had there.
If I was really having a legitimate bad LSD trip, walking into a teepee would not help.
With a bunch of other people having a freak out.
Yeah, I would have questions.
Yeah. The doctor in charge of the freakout teepee was Dr. Cameron Bangs, who kept a diary during the event. Bangs.
How common was the last name Bangs in the 70s?
That's so not a real name. Like, he opened up a copy of Rolling Stone and was like, Cameron Crowe, Lester Bangs, Cameron Bangs, Dr. Cameron Bangs. That's my name. I am a doctor of Freakonomics.
Bangs showed up to Vortex 1 wearing a bright green polyester suit. He recalled that within 30 seconds of his arrival, a tall, naked hippie approached him with one hand clenched, outstretched towards him. You know what this is? The hippie asked. The hippie then opened his hand to present a grasshopper and said, "This is life, man."
Wow.
I'm a doctor of freaks. You don't come with that.
Banks, who volunteered to oversee healthcare and kept a diary of his week, may be Vortex's most lucid observer. During his few off hours, the 33-year-old physician strolled around the park. In the quieter hours of the festival, he said it looked like a Civil War battlefield. Thousands of bodies sprawled on the ground. Around the edges, shadowy figures sat near campfires. Quote, too much LSD was the biggest problem. As people hallucinated, many for the first time, there was a lot of panicking and screaming. A man attempted suicide by stabbing himself in the chest. A drunken woman with a tire track on her face.
Oh my God.
Claims that a car ran over her head, but she seemed largely unscathed.
What?
So the doctor, and they called him Dr. Hippie, by the way, later, like, because he was 33, so he was technically a square, but because he presided over this event and was quoted largely in newspapers, he never shook the nickname Dr. Hippie. He became the preeminent American doctor on the study of hypothermia, and he still never shook the nickname Dr. Hippie. But yeah, a lady came in with a tire track on her fucking face like Lord Tensai, if anyone remembers that.
Oh,
yeah. And she got her head run over by a car and was fine. She was just like...
I'm just trying to work out how that happens, and I cannot.
I've been around people that have been on acid.
Yeah.
And they just kind of like walk around and just like... like what he like is talking about, he's like describing like deleted scenes from the Blue Boy episode of Dragnet, where it's just like the guy's painting the wall and he eats the paint, and it's just like, I can't imagine like what they made the acid out of. I guess it was like bad acid or something like that.
Well, the thing with the lady, because I thought about this, because I read this little bit around 2 o'clock in the morning last night, and I've been trying to make heads or tails of it, and the only thing I can think is that this woman was lying down in very soft mud and then got run over, and her head was pressed all the way down into the mud, thus saving her face from being crushed, but still leaving her with a tire tread across her face.
Or maybe they were playing Frisbee with a tire.
or she just ran headfirst into a tire.
Yeah. They were playing Frisbee with a tire, and your motor skills aren't good when you're on acid.
Right. Like I'm thinking there's either that or there's like a Willis Jeep parked there with the spare tire on the back, and she's chasing after a hacky sack and just smashes her face into the Jeep and is like, I got run over by a truck. It's like, no, lady, you just smashed your face into a spare tire. Yeah, so the lady got run over by the truck. A man who called himself Blackfoot acted as Bang's self-appointed pharmacist.
I'm a dancing man. Ow! It's like Ricky Medlock.
Yeah. His specialty was identifying street drugs, although he didn't know them all. Quote.
So Ricky Medlock?
Yeah.
I'm imagining Blackfoot like he takes the drugs and like throws them in his mouth and swishes them around and then spits them back into his hand.
You know,
that's how he identifies
Scott,
them.
it's funny you mention that.
Oh, God.
Quote, if he didn't recognize the drug, he'd take it and report back.
Oh, okay.
It is said that Bang set a world record for treating both LSD overdoses and sunburned genitals in a single time period.
Who held that record before?
No one. He stands alone. That's one of those where you're like, you read that in the Guinness book and you're like trying to think of a record you could possibly break, and you get that one, you just like, all right, keep it moving.
That's what he thought of the Cameron Bangs name. Dr. Kurt Loader. Kurt Loader. Winner.
The early pioneers of the rainbow gatherings, which are still around today. Those are the guys, if you ever go to music festivals and you see litter arranged into gigantic, geometric shapes and things like that. That's the Rainbow Children. Man.
Oh,
they're trying to make
really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I actually think those are pretty neat.
Yeah, so the early pioneers of the rainbow gatherings worked there making an information booth, which, boy, that would be the greatest information booth ever.
Yeah, if you freak out, go to the freak out.
Go to the freak out TP. If you need information, go to the freak out information booth. So helping with security, lost children, supply trucks, stage building, and that is where they took the name the Rainbow Family of Living Light, or simply the Rainbow Family. So they're still around today. Now, at this point, you may be wondering about the rock aspect of this rock festival. As they only had 3 weeks to organize it, Vortex 1 had no big name bands. None. Zero.
Oh.
Not one.
But with all the stuff that's going on, the music is just like incidental.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, for sure.
It's like,
For sure.
Yeah, it's like you could have had anybody there,
Yeah.
and it really.
And they did.
You could have had the Shags. Like,
not one permit was issued by the state to stage the festival, nor did the state take out any liability insurance for this festival. So they were really hedging their bets here. This did not stop festival organizers from verbally telling people throughout the week that the following performers were expected to perform. So, like, all these reports I read of the firsthand, people were like, yeah, and then they came by and said that Janis Joplin's helicopter was late. So they just sent a bunch of fucking probably COINTELPRO government fucking hired hippies to walk around and be like, and these are the actual bands that
wait, Janis Joplin died in 71.
She died later this year, I think. She died in, I believe.
So funny. Yeah, Brian Jones is going to show up.
Bobby Kennedy.
Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper.
So these were the
with Chantilly lace.
These were the performers expected to that the festival organizers basically just walked around and were like, hey, did you hear these guys are going to be here? John Lennon, the Grateful Dead, Donovan, Santana, Janis Joplin, and the Jefferson Airplane. So that was
that is quite a lineup.
That is
Valens.
a awesome lineup. Like, they were claiming, Otis Redding's going to be there. It's going to be crazy.
Flying in from Wisconsin.
They literally were just going around being like, hey, did you hear that Santana's plane has got delayed? But he's in Sheboygan, but he'll be here. So here are some of the actual bands that performed at the Vortex. They were all local bands from Portland, and I maybe if by the time I edit this, I might have found some, but as of this recording, I have not found a single fucking recorded track from any of these bands. I just love the names. So here are some of the bands: Notary Sojak, Jacob's Ladder,
Yes.
Portland Zoo. Portland Zoo.
It was just morning drive
That's a great fucking band name.
Yeah, Portland Zoo. It's like the Chicago Transit Authority.
Well, it's the morning drive time, like radio guy. Just up there with a fart machine.
Yeah. Hey, this is Dr. Payne and the Beeve.
Portland Zoo. All right, we heard Janis Joplin's gonna be here. We did a little version of Hold On. And just like next in the fart button.
Take another little piece of my fart. Tutu, Wings of Freedom.
Wings of Freedom played?
Yeah, do you know Wings of Freedom?
No.
I was going to be like, well.
Isn't that a David Hasselhoff song? No, it's Wings of I don't even know.
Crystal Garden, Brown Sugar.
Crystal Garden sounds like a performer on that Double Dragon, the original movie soundtrack.
I was thinking it sounded like one of the contestants on Surviving Nugent, like the Crystal Garden. She's the vegan that Ted hates. Brown Sugar, the Firemen. So now we've got the zoo and the firemen. We're getting all the civic utilities in there. Gene Redding and Funk.
And funk.
They're
not even trying with these bits. Brown Sugar. Gene Raymond and Funk.
Mother Smucker's Jam.
Is that the product or the band?
Yeah. These are not real bands. These
I imagine
created.
it said that these are all local bands from Portland. I imagine this is literally every band in Portland. Like there's so many.
They're a bunch of FBI dudes.
Yeah.
They're just like undercover bands.
They're all dressed like the fucking Hives or something. They've got the suits and the skinny
No,
ties.
they're just a bunch of 45-year-old men with pot bellies dressed as hippies that are just like, yeah, we're French as mustard.
U.S. Cadenza.
These are so fake bands. These are not real bands.
And one band, Children of Moo, performed naked. So,
I hope the fact that band called the Firemen way back then has just prevented anyone from using that band name. Because it's such a great band name.
Yeah. Fire Hose was like, no, we heard about the Firemen. We're going to be Fire Hose. Okay, so this is fun. One Vortex 1 concert goer was one Homer Groening, who showed up to the festival with his son, Matt Groening.
Okay.
The younger Groening would summarize his Vortex experience for a British newspaper. So this is Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons, quote, I remember desperately wanting the bands to stop playing at 3 a.m. I remember sleeping under the stars and watching a drunken hippie puke on me.
So he watched it, but he was powerless.
So, yeah, like apparently he was like a child, and he's looking up at the stars, like, "Wow, how amazing!" And then a hippie just leaned over him and vomited. Like,
That had to be a repressed memory. Like he remembered that a year ago
in hypnotherapy. Yeah,
just like I can just Matt Groening, just 8 years old or whatever he was, just being mad that the Children of Moo is playing.
Children of Moo. I just want
Mother Smucker's Jam is just.
And then a guy
playing their 4-hour set, and they're actually FBI undercover dudes.
Yeah.
Like.
And then the guy from Notary Sojak pukes on his head.
Is Sojak one word or
2 words? Notary Sojak.
Sojak?
Yeah, Sojak. So Don McFadden, a musician who played at Vortex, was quoted as saying, I don't think we were ever without hashish. It was like having water or air. We were also never not on LSD. So
did they even play? Like that's
apparently. And again, the fact that everyone's on LSD makes this next statement dubious, but boy, I hope it's true. Someone brought a pet cougar on a leash. And then this one, I don't know how you would know this, but someone's pet anaconda got loose in the park. So there's a guy with a cougar and a guy with an anaconda, which is this is a plot point on.
I hope they fought later.
Oh, for sure they fought. Yeah. They found the anaconda and the cougar like wrapped up and like that one in the Florida Everglades, like the gator and the anaconda.
And I hope it happened in the freak out tent.
Oh, for sure. Imagine being in the freak out tent and a cougar wanders in. Wow. Oh, I'm freaking out, man. I'm freaking out. There's a fucking cougar in here, man. It's crazy. And then Blackfoot's just like, calm down, bro. Calm down. The cougar and the anaconda are real, but calm down.
And then you just like the entire time, people are just like, they just have like random people just like walking around just mad. Yeah, I heard Blue Cheer, like their bus just broke down. Blue Cheer is in the traffic jam, man.
This is the last little fact I have. Nudity was the predominant theme of the festival. Nearly every firsthand account I read had something to do with people being naked and just naked activities going on. Obviously you have a lot of drumming, a lot of guitar playing, just random people. By the way, the bands thing, random people were just getting on stage the whole time. Like,
yeah, it sounds like
everything I read, like these were the bands that showed up, but by all accounts, like there was just random people just wandering onto stage and grabbing instruments and just playing. It's like this was the most disorganized
5 hippies going, what do you call? It's like, I don't know, Mother Smucker's Jam.
Yeah, we're Mother Smucker's Jam. Look at my dick. But the one thing that I did read, and I read a bunch of eyewitness accounts, nearly all of them made reference to this guy. Apparently, at the festival, there was a very tall African-American gentleman who was selling hot dogs, and he had a helium balloon tied to his penis. So
Sure.
everyone talked about this guy.
Yeah.
But he had a big red balloon tied to his dick. So his dick was just up, and he was selling hot dogs. So
That's great advertising.
I mean, honestly,
They're going to be easy to find in a crowd.
yeah, you're going to be easy to find in a
It's
crowd.
like the fucking Sims.
Yeah, and you got a balloon tied to your wiener, just wandering around. Perfect. Yeah, I read like 5.
Did he have any like a cool hat too, or was it just the balloon?
I think he was just the balloon. He had a balloon and he had hot dogs, and it's one of those things where like you know you're hungry. You're done with that big battleship boiler of veggie stew.
Oh man, this guy's like the hero.
That
He's coming
guy-
in with hot dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck yeah, he probably cleaned up. My only question is, where did he put the money?
Or the hot dog.
Or the hot dogs? Yeah, there's a lot of questions for this gentleman. No one will ever, I don't know if we'll ever be able to get these answers because he's lost to the fog of time. But boy, I want to talk to this gentleman. So
That man was Herman Cain. He used that money to find Godfather's
yeah,
Godfather's is so good.
yeah.
That is a hill I will die on. I fucking love Godfather's
Yeah.
pizza.
The only Godfather's pizza I ever had, there was a Godfather's in the Hess station across the street from my high school.
Oh yeah.
Which gas station pizza is usually not good. So it's
Yeah.
not the best of Godfather's
It's not the best
pizzas.
representation.
Yeah.
So the festival finally ended September 3rd, 1970. At the end of the festival, Governor McCall actually visited the park, escorted by a phalanx of state troopers. He met with the organizers, so the police liaisons, presumably still naked.
I was just imagine the first person he meets is a
The hot dog guy. What's up, man? Want a hot dog? Oh, God.
Governor McCall's just like
Put your dick away. What's wrong with you?
Governor McCall just is like doing his memoirs. He's like, the first thing I saw was a man with a large helium balloon attached
Yeah.
to his penis, and he was like, "Would you like a hot dog?"
The first thing I saw was a red balloon. I followed the balloon string down to its origin and
that's
was
when I created-
horrified to see a
that's-
human member attached to a hot dog
And that's
salesman.
when I created the Green Party.
So he shows up to the festival and he so reportedly hugs some of the hippies, which is gross. I don't,
Yeah.
I agree. I might
Disgusting.
agree with them on a lot of things politically. I would never touch any of these people after this long of being in a field and eating disgusting mush.
He absolutely burned the suit he was wearing right after.
Hell yeah, he did.
Like a tiny child Matt Groening walking around, just like what, just, like overblown, just
Yeah,
like
don't-
blown. Like,
I'm having a cow, man.
Yeah,
So he hugged some of the hippies and he joined them in holding hands in a circle. They chanted ohms for a few minutes and then they recited the Lord's Prayer and a few lines from William Blake. And then my favorite part of the whole story. Meanwhile, back in Portland, Nixon canceled at the last minute on the American Legion and sent Spiro Agnew instead. So all
Perfect.
of this was for nothing. Nixon was like, "Oh, fuck it, I'm not going."
He was at the music festival, probably.
yeah, he was under a sheet mask, just walking around.
and John Sinclair had all this TNT, and he was just had the most amazing cookout in Detroit. Just like he had the MC5 over, he had question mark over, and they just had some hamburgers and hot dogs and blew up a TV in their backyard.
Though no doubt aided by the last-minute cancellation by Nixon, the event had its desired effect. Both the American Legion Convention and the anti-war activities of what was left of the Jamboree were carried out without any major incident. The concert was considered by many to be an excellent means of preventing violence. Far from committing political suicide, McCall won re-election that November, defeating his opponent Robert W. Straub handily. McCall later told Studs Terkel, quote, "It was the damnedest confrontation you'll ever see. We took part 20 miles south of Portland and turned it into an overnight bivouac and disco party. There was a lot of pot smokers."
Those words.
Fucking idiot. There was a lot of pot smoking and skinny dipping, but nobody was killed, end quote. Because the event was non-commercial and had no commercial backers and no performers other than local bands, the mainstream press largely ignored it as a music event, focusing instead on the political aspects. It was one of the largest rock and roll festivals of the era and still the largest rock festival in Oregon history. A sequel was planned in 1980 called Vortex 2, but it never materialized because it was planned by
COINTELPRO
hippies.
was defunded.
Yeah, COINTELPRO had been defunded by the Carter administration. They couldn't afford Vortex 2. And that is Vortex 1.
Crazy.
It's a story that massive credit for the idea goes to the fine people of the Portland Underground walking tour that I did when I was in Portland, Oregon a couple of years ago. I did one of their tours. If you're ever in Portland, it's like $22. I tipped the guy 100%. I was like, this shit was amazing. Walked us around Portland, told the whole like dirty, fucked up history of the town, which it's a really fun town because everything about it is fucked up from top to bottom. From the founding to right up till today, everything is wrong with this city, and it has dirty 1800s stuff, which is my favorite stuff. And also, we get down to like the south end of the South Park blocks, and he started talking about the protest, and then went into, and then he mentions this festival. I'm like, that's the weirdest goddamn thing I've ever heard. A government-sponsored rock festival. There's so much of this story that kind of resonates now to me, where there's this push and pull of, people being like, oh, you're not extreme enough, you're selling out to the man and shit like that on the left. Like, it seems like a lot of this division is still sort of intact in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by that entire era. Like the late 60s, early 70s, like when the government was really fucking with LSD. Like they tried it out on these like smaller scale experiments and were like, well, this is a problem. Let's get it to everybody. See what happens.
Let's fuck up this entire culture.
And then create the Unabomber.
Right. Yeah.
It's one of those things where you can understand why the Rajneesh, where that came from, that whole thing. And it's also like, it's interesting because it's like, not many people know. It's almost like how much of a black hole Oregon is, where there's so many things that people that happen in Oregon that are completely insane that like people do not know about. Like most people wouldn't know about the whole thing with the Rajneesh, and people don't know about the Vortex 1, and people don't know about the greatness of like Playboy Buddy Rose versus Rowdy Roddy Piper's feud and Beetlejuice. Like we don't know about this stuff,
And Mayor Sabu going through a cheese-using tone. Homicidal, genocidal, Buckminster Fullerene busting Mayor Terry Brunk. Baby. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it is, because nowadays people are like, oh, Portlandia, everybody there's a crunchy hippie. I'm like, no, they were going to try to, or hipster. It's like, no, they were going to try to kill Richard Nixon. There were very much plans in place to at least blow up a significant amount of government people and pro-war activists and shit like that. Like, it was quite a place. And then, a lot of people's kind of criticism of the hippie generation is that it did sort of devolve into self-indulgence. Like, you have that choice between drugs or overthrowing the government, and everybody kind of floated towards drugs, and that kind of gives rise to what they called in the 70s the me generation of people just being like, you know what, fuck all y'all, I'm gonna get high. Instead of forming into like collective action and trying to block off streets and occupy administration buildings, it went the other way.
Yeah, the fact that they threw it together so quickly and it totally worked
in 3 weeks. Yeah.
It's like when you pretend to throw a ball for a dog and they totally fall for it.
Oh my God, you're exactly right.
Have you ever thrown a party like that where you just think of it that day and it like actually like
we had a week.
We succeeded one time at doing one of those things where we actually like, it was like 3:00 and we were just like, we're bored. What should we do? Hey, let's throw a party.
Yeah.
And then we just posted something on the campus like bulletin board, and then it just happened to be a party showed up, and we were like, well, shit.
Well, nice. All right.
Shit me up a rope. We didn't even buy beer. All the beer just showed up. It was just like people saw it, and then we were like, it turned out.
Yeah.
But it was like a fluke because we tried it 10 other times and it didn't turn out. It was just like 10 people sitting around watching like something ridiculous on TV. Ernest Goes to Camp or something.
I feel like we threw together our famous winter of our disco tent party pretty quickly, where we basically got a bunch of bed sheets and turned our living room into a tent where we played disco music. And the one thing about that I do remember was we thought it was very cool because we were 19. We got a hold of some Miller High Life Light, which I don't even think Pacific they make anymore.
Oh, that
which
stuff
was
is kind of it's kind
it
of
was
gnarly.
straight up water, and because I think we told our guy, we were like, hey man, get us some Miller High Life, and he was like, light was cheaper, and we're like, ew, gross. But we had this whole grand plan to fill the bathtub with ice, and of course, as you can imagine, a bathroom shared by 3 college guys is pretty fucking gross, and we still went ahead with it.
Yeah, it's like, why is the ice turning yellow?
Yeah. We filled the bathtub with ice, and even as we were doing it, we're like, this is unappetizing at best. And then by the end of the party, when the ice melted, we were like, good. We've been drinking out of there all night. Gross. We all have been drinking Ring Around the Tub. Sweet.
Oh god.
So imagine that,
but writ large,
but like with 100,000 people,
and instead of a bathtub, a boiler from a battleship.
yeah. And instead of well, there was probably an equal amount of toe jam proportionally between your tub and the boiler.
Oh my god.
Do we know what happened to the cougar? Like, did it just,
No, that's just a weird detail I saw. There was a damn cougar on a leash. I'm like, I didn't know you could do
just
that.
vanished into the Oregon wilderness.
my
Ran
question-
for mayor of Portland.
Yeah,
actually.
and won. Yeah. He eventually beat Tom McCall for mayor. That cougar was mayor of Portland through the second half of the 70s. But no, like the cougar thing struck me weird because have you ever tried to put a cat on a leash?
Yeah, they
it's
don't like
fucking impossible. Now imagine a goddamn cougar.
Who owns a cougar?
The
Every person who owns an exotic animal like that as a pet deserves to die.
Yeah, or it's Michonne on The Walking Dead. Other than that,
Yeah.
you're either on The Walking Dead or you deserve to die.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then someone brought the anaconda. Like, that's not going to go sideways.
I just imagining like people running into a cave to get away from the anaconda and then running back out because the cougar's in there.
Yeah. I guess we'll start with Scott because we hadn't had you on in a while. Tell us about Soda Padinsky.
Okay, so me and my friend Brian drink and review weird sodas. Sometimes it's normal sodas like, the Christmas Mountain Dew or whatever. We try to get weird
What the
shit.
fuck is the Christmas Mountain Dew?
They make a Christmas Mountain Dew.
Is it like
every
cranberry,
year.
I guess?
I think it's just they cut like Code Red with regular Mountain Dew. It's really anticlimactic.
So it's like what everyone does when they go to CC's Pizza?
Yeah, pretty much. It's just
No
already
one goes
bottled.
to Cece's Pizza. Come
Well,
on.
not willingly, but, some people have children.
I went to CC's Pizza like 3 times when the mystique was still there, when it's like, oh, it's a pizza buffet. And they have
Yeah, I tried it
macaroni.
once, and my plate, when I got it, was just wet.
Oh, yeah. They have a lot of wet
Here,
plates.
you put
It
your
was still
pizza on this
steaming.
wet fucking plate.
Yeah.
No, get me out of here.
What are the other ones?
We did, I actually fucked up on this because there was this, like, apple cider vinegar drink, and there's, like, the drink, and then there's the apple cider vinegar that you cut.
the Brags, the Brags
Yeah.
actually
You just actually drank apple cider vinegar?
organized
I
the Vortex 1.
Because
I imagine that was a short review.
I had to get it from the Piggly Wiggly in my hometown when I was home over Christmas
Oh,
because I
shit.
couldn't find it out here. So I like flew it back and everything. And my friend Brian, because we were doing it over Discord, he had the drink and he was drinking it no problem. And I was just like, how the fuck are you getting through this? It's fucking abysmal. And because it was vinegar.
Oh my god.
It's, I guess, really healthy for you, but like we were doing some research on the guy, the Bragg guy or whatever, who he just really hitched his wagon to the healing properties of vinegar.
He was probably in the freakout teepee.
Oh, yeah. And just, like, drinking so much that he just had to fucking reek of vinegar all
Dude,
the time.
I've got it. I see it, man. It's in the sky.
It's like it's not worth being healthy to smell this way all the time.
I'm going to have everyone drinking vinegar.
And his wife that co-founded it with him, lady with the tire tread on her head.
It's great. Yeah,
They
and she's still
commiserated
got the
together in the
Yeah, that's-
freakout teepee.
That's
and-
their wedding photo, her in a dress.
with the tire track on her face. Oh Christ! Well, check out Soda Padinsky on the Rebrew Network. Our friend Tink Edwards.
Yeah, we also do Game Draw, where we try to explain the plots to video games. And
I love that because I don't play any games, so I listen to Game Draw just to actually know some shit when I hear
it turns out
teenagers
a lot
talk
of them
about games.
are really stupid.
Have you had an
Yeah.
episode about Mighty Bomb Jack?
No, not yet. We're trying to.
What about the Adventures of Bayou Billy?
We haven't dug into Bayou Billy just yet. I would like to.
Adventures of Bayou Billy. Well, yeah, check out all Scott's stuff on the Rebrew Network. Adam Todd Brown, plug your stuff, my man. I think most of our listeners probably know about Unpops. Lots of our former guests have been on there. You can check out Brouhaha podcast and of course Heart Shaped Pod with you and friend of the show Travis Clark. Tell us about all the stuff, man.
All right, that's our Nirvana fan podcast, Heart Shaped Pod,
which then spud off onto the
$3 Pod, y'all, a limited podcast event about the history of the band Limp Bizkit.
Yes,
which I cannot recommend enough. Don't worry. No one on the podcast likes Limp Bizkit either.
Did anybody like Big Dumb Face?
No.
Good.
It was so bad. And check out Unpopular Opinion. It's a whole network. We have a whole bunch of shows. Pretty Scary is our true crime show.
Yep.
I host a conspiracy podcast with Connor McSpadden called Conspiracy the Show.
Oh, that's fun. Of Mean Boys podcast fame. Yeah, another friend of the show. You've got Quincy Johnson on there. You guys do What in the World?
Yeah, What in the World, which is an international news and politics podcast.
Which, by the way, for a couple of comedians, you guys have undertaken the most complicated possible thing to mine for jokes.
I've learned so much. I admire
the shit out of you guys for taking that on, because I listened to that show and I'm just like, first of all, you two are extremely smart and well read on the subject. I'm also like, I would never try to go deep on this because I would be way out of my depth.
And Quincy's got the best voice ever.
Oh my God. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we did an episode about a year and a half ago where we were like, hey, the U.S. is probably going to try and invade Venezuela at some point. Yeah. And now, just like last week, it came out that Trump really wants to invade Venezuela.
Yeah.
So that felt good.
Oh, yeah. So get together with your local militant leftist and let's take to the streets, guys, you know?
Please.
But yeah, so be sure to check out all of the programs on Unpopular Opinion.
Unpops.com.
Unpops.com. Details there. Take a Walk. I've been on a bunch of episodes of that with Vanessa Gritton. So yeah. So if you like this podcast and you're not on the Unpops train or on the Rebrew train for that fucking matter, get on board. Support good people. Support good podcasts. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/thegoodspod. We're on Twitter @thegoodspod. Every episode ever, youtube.com/thegoodspod. Pat, what should the folks do when they get to iTunes and Google Play?
Rate, review, and subscribe. Spread the word. Subscribe to all the podcasts that
in the world,
all in the world, all of them. Maybe not, but subscribe to all of our guest podcasts. Subscribe to our podcast. Go on iTunes and just give us a rating. It doesn't take a lot of time. It's just a couple of clicks, maybe a little typing, little click, little screenshot, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Give us a rating and then tell us about it, and we might send you a sticker or something.
Yeah.
Just, let us know on Twitter. We'll take care of you. If you
and
take care of
it shows the attitude of gratitude. And if you don't have the attitude of gratitude, well, Mother Smucker's jam.
Song of the week this week, our friend Chris Stalcup, who I met down in Waverly, Alabama at the 280 Boogie. We played one of his tunes on the show a couple months ago. His band, Chris Stalcup The Grange, they've got an EP that's coming out soon, and they've released a single. It's out today. This is Chris Stalcup The Grange, and the song is Cocaine. And we'll see you next week.
Well, I sweat like a ride in the cocaine. I'm out of breath like a harness mule. I pour my heart out on this stage, singing all my songs for you. It's like Harriet told me, leave room for the sailor bang. Sometimes the words will come easy, sometimes they sound all the same. Sometimes they sound all the same. With a fire in your heart, this side, son, don't let go. Make sure they know your name. Well, they say that the road ain't easy and that it's full of regret. Well, it's like a singer told me, he said, oh, rock and roll, oh, I never forget. Rock and roll, never forget. With a fire in your heart, this side, son, don't let go. Give everything you get.
Tales from the Woods was mixed, edited, and distributed by me, Rivers Langley. You can find the show on Twitter at The Goods Pod. Our theme song was composed by DJ Smiles. Check him out on Twitter at DJ Smiles.